If you're unfamiliar with Google Sheets, I'm going to kind of show you around here a little bit. First couple things you really need to know is the difference between a column and a row. This is a column, so this would be column A, column B, column C, and so on. And these are rows. So here's row 1, row 2, row 3, and so on. So if I were to look at columns and rows, oftentimes when we refer to things, I'll refer to C2. So that would be column C, row 2, which is the number 85. So oftentimes in Google Sheets, we're referring to individual cells like C2. Here are some other handy things up top. We have a toolbar. We can change fonts. And in fact, if I'm going to change fonts in my sheet, the first thing I need is go up to the left-hand corner here and click one time. And that highlights the whole sheet. Now, any change that I make to the aesthetic of the sheet will be changed to everything. So if I change the font type, the font size, I can bold, I can italicize, I can change my text color, and then we're going to go ahead and undo these. I can make a variety of changes there. I can change the justification. I can make it left. I can make it right. I can make it centered. I can even, this is kind of a handy here, the vertical alignment. It will change your numbers or items in a cell to either be towards the bottom of the cell or towards the top. Now, if we were to make a cell a little bit larger, okay, so let's take this cell here, and we're going to change the alignment. It's at the top, or I'm sorry, it's the bottom right now. Let's change it to the top. And then here's what it would look like in the middle. So we can make changes there as well. We can change the angle of our text and numbers. Okay. And then over here we have, we can insert links. We can add comments. We can insert charts, create filters for data, and formulas under the Functions tab. Some other changes we can make with this row number 1, by grabbing the little line here, I can drag it down and I can make it much larger. I can do the same to manipulate columns. I can even grab a column and move it. If I want to move that information, oh, I need my little, we get the little hand and it grabs, and I can move that around. There we go. Now we're moving it. There. Go ahead and undo that. I can also freeze panes. So say I want to freeze, let's say this contained headers. And in fact, I'll go ahead and insert one row above. Okay, and we'll go ahead and put some names in here. So this will be name. And this will be, oops. Let's just put height or something generic. Okay. Now what I can do is if I want to, I could freeze these panes by highlighting this row, going to view, and then freezing. I'm going to freeze just the one row. Okay. Now what that does is this, if I scroll, my row stays at the top. So even if I scroll down through data, let's say we had just rows upon rows upon rows, hundreds of rows of data, I could scroll down and my categories will still stay at the top, which is very handy. We can also freeze this column. So if you want to do that as well, that's also an option. And I believe you can freeze up to 2 columns and 2 rows. Let's go ahead back to the top here. Okay, there we are. I'm going to go ahead and undo some of my changes. So you notice there how to change the size of columns and rows. And you also saw how to insert. Inserting again, you just highlight, right-click on your mouse, and then you have options here to insert one column to the right, one to the left. I could delete. I could clear all the data from the column. I can even hide the column. I can resize. You can see we have a number of different options here. And the same goes for rows. If I highlight a row and I right-click, I get the same exact options. Last but not least, and this is probably one of my favorite features, changing the grid lines. So if I want to go ahead and highlight my data, I really like grid lines. So I go to this box here, borders, and I can choose my borders, my favorite, thick all around borders. But if I don't want that, I have other options as well. So if I go ahead and click this box, I could click to have the whole sheet with borders. I can also undo that. Control Z. Just so if you see me working here and I'm undoing things as I'm doing them, just as a side note, that's I'm holding Control and hitting Z, and that takes everything back to its original state. So I've kind of undone those changes I've made. Let's take a look at one individual box. If I put borders around that, if you notice, there are just borders around this particular box. I can also change that to just like an underline. We'll go ahead and undo my steps here. Okay. Make it just a underlined box. Okay, now if you notice, it's just underlined there. So those are just some of the changes to the visual layout of your sheets that you can make.